What if the silence you hate is exactly what prepares you? What if the lack of answers is the answer life wants you to learn to endure? Not everything that seems empty is absent. Not every delay is a loss. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's forging. Waiting is unbearable for those in a hurry, but it's a golden path. For those who seek wisdom, the impatient soul wants shortcuts. The mature soul learns to walk with steady steps even in the fog. Most people rush. They shout, they demand, they slam doors. They demand the heavens, but the strong man waits in silence, with resolve with faith, with emotional maturity, because he knows time is not late, time refines today. We'll dive into a story where everything seemed to contradict the promise, where time seemed to mock faith, and silence seemed like abandonment, but it wasn't abandonment, it was preparation. If you've ever felt ignored by life, disbelieved by others, or forgotten by God, stay until the end. This story isn't about someone distant, it's about you, about me, about everyone who has ever waited, without knowing if they'd be remembered. And if these words resonate, subscribe. Here, every story is a subtle reminder that silence also speaks, and often, what seems like an end, is just time breathing before the revelation. Today, we'll uncover the Stoic message behind wait in silence. Time will reveal the promise to Abraham. Abraham was a man among many. He wasn't born a king, didn't wear crowns, and inherited no cities. He lived among tents, in lands where the sky was the same for everyone, but where few knew how to listen to the silence of the stars. He was an ordinary man, yes, but with an ear attuned to what isn't spoken in words. In a time when God seemed distant and inner voices blurred with the wind, Abraham heard a call, not a shout, not a violent command, but a silent direction that said, "Leave your land, your family, your father's house, and go to the land I will show you. And more, I will make you a great nation." It was a promise, immense, impossible, and given to someone who didn't even have a son. He and Sarah were already aging. The vigor of their bodies was fading, and her womb, barren from the start, seemed to mock the idea of bearing life. The years passed, and with them, every human opportunity vanished. Reality was unforgiving. Everything around them screamed no. But there is a force that resists the shouts of reality, the force of the unseen. Abraham, even in the face of impossibility, held on, not out of stubbornness, but faith. Not a loud faith, made of demonstrations and applause, but a silent, stoic faith, dwelling deep within those who've learned to walk without a map. He left. He abandoned his land, his ties, his predictability. He began living by the promise, sustained by something that didn't yet exist. And that, perhaps, is the beginning of all real transformation, the choice to walk with steady feet, even when the ground seems to vanish with every step. Then came the years, the long years of silence. The promise had been made, but life seemed indifferent. Days passed, seasons changed, hair turned white, and nothing happened. No sign, no movement, just time, cold and relentless, like sand slipping away without caring for those who wait. Sarah, her face marked by wrinkles that don't lie, carried the shadow of frustration in her eyes. And Abraham, even though called God's friend, lived like anyone else, wandering deserts, facing scarcity, dealing with kings, conflicts, and decisions. Everything except the fulfillment of what he truly hoped for. Imagine Abraham, on so many nights, stepping out of his tent in silence, alone, gazing at the sky, the vastness of the stars above him, and no answer within him. Just the echo of the promise, "So shall your offspring be." How many times did that echo sound like mockery? How many times did he think of giving up, accepting the obvious, concluding he'd dreamed too much? But he didn't quit. He waited. Waited when everyone around him said it was too late. Waited when Sarah, gripped by doubt, offered another woman to bear his heir. He fell. Yes. He faltered. Yes. But true faith isn't the absence of failure, it's the ability to return to trust even after the mistake. He remained. The wait was long, so long that the miracle didn't come when belief was easy. It came when everything said it was too late. Isaac was born when Sarah's body could no longer conceive, when her womb was, by human standards, barren and dead. But it's in the impossible that the promise proves true. Isaac wasn't just a son. He was confirmation that time is not the master of the promise, it's merely its servant. The fulfillment wasn't just a gift, but the seal that all the pain, all the doubt, all the waiting, had a purpose. But a man's journey doesn't end with the blessing. God or fate or life, whatever you call it, always demands more from those who've learned to trust. And one day, the same voice that promised, asked for what hurt the most, asked for Isaac. And Abraham obeyed. Not because he was unfeeling, not because he didn't love, but because he no longer trusted the logic of circumstances. He trusted the silent faithfulness of the unseen. He climbed the mountain with his son in his arms and his heart in conflict, but he didn't hesitate, because those who've waited in silence for the impossible learn to surrender without despair what they've received. This is the virtue Marcus Aurelius would call obedience to the logos of nature. It's not blind submission, but the understanding that there's something greater than our desires. Seneca would call it readiness before fate, and Epictetus would say, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Abraham didn't judge the silence as abandonment. He didn't judge time as an enemy, and he didn't judge the test as injustice. He simply remained art. In the end, the son wasn't taken. The promise wasn't revoked. The sacrifice wasn't completed. But Abraham's heart, that was fully surrendered. This story isn't just about faith. It's about inner discipline, about emotional mastery, about a soul that doesn't rebel against time but chooses to be forged by it. In a world where everything must be immediate, where value lies in the now and faith has become a tool of demand, Abraham teaches the opposite, that waiting is a path, that silence is a language, and that time is the womb where true promises are born. Stoic wisdom isn't distant from this story. On the contrary, it's found in Abraham's very rhythm, in his patient walk, in his silence amid delay, in his serene trust even in doubt. This is true strength, not controlling events, but standing firm. When they slip entirely beyond our control, Abraham waited, suffered, fell, rose, silenced, and finally saw the impossible become real. Because those who don't demand time to bow to their will, see time become their ally. Within biblical tradition, Abraham is often remembered as the father of faith. But beyond belief, there's something quieter and perhaps more valuable in his journey, the ability to wait with dignity. He didn't just trust, he endured, and he did so without drama, without demands, without trying to manipulate time or circumstances. This posture, so rare today, deeply echoes Stoic teachings. Stoicism doesn't teach us to control the world, but to master how we respond to it, and Abraham did exactly that. When the days stretched in silence, when the promise seemed forgotten, he didn't break. He didn't curse time or rebel against the divine. He simply kept going. As Epictetus would say, don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and you will find peace. This is perhaps one of the hardest lessons for any human being. Our natural instinct is to want everything to meet our expectations, for time to obey our deadlines, for life to answer when we call. But it doesn't work that way, and trying to force that logic only plunges us into frustration. Abraham understood this. He didn't try to mold time to his will. He molded his will to the nature of time. There's a quiet beauty in this adaptation. It's not passive resignation, but an inner strength that learns to act with steadiness, even in uncertainty. Seneca wrote, "Nothing is more honorable than a heart at peace in the face of fortune's delay." This is Abraham's honor, not because of the grandeur of his mission, but because of the serenity with which he faced the delay of what was promised. He didn't demand daily proof that the promise still stood. He didn't seek guarantees to feed his faith. He simply remained not in haste, but in active patience. From a Stoic perspective, this attitude isn't just admirable, it's essential, because a man's true power lies in his ability to remain whole even when everything around him seems to crumble. It's not about avoiding pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about embracing it without being consumed by it. And Marcus Aurelius adds, with every obstacle, ask yourself, what does nature require of me now? Abraham, faced with Sarah's barrenness, the years piling up without answers, the absence of any visible sign, seems to have asked himself the same question, what is required of me now? The answer, though not written in stone, seemed to echo in his soul. Silence, patience, steadfastness. This is the virtue of endurance, not stubbornness, not pride, but emotional maturity, the maturity of one who has already understood. They don't control time but can control themselves. The maturity of one who no longer shouts at the sky but walks with steady feet on the ground. The maturity of one who has learned that suffering isn't punishment, it's refinement. Abraham is, therefore, a mirror for anyone walking through uncertainty. He reminds us that true hope isn't loud. It isn't made of slogans or empty declarations. True hope is patient, it's disciplined, it's silent, and for that very reason, it's strong. At its core, he embodies a deeply Stoic principle that of active acceptance, not accepting as one who surrenders, but as one who prepares, as one who understands that time isn't against us, it's forging us. Abraham didn't need to see to believe. He didn't need to touch to trust. He only needed to keep going. This isn't just faith, this is mastery. This is philosophy, lived in the desert where there are no distractions, only truth. And it's in this truth that Stoic wisdom resides, not fighting what we can't change, but changing ourselves in the face of what comes. This is true freedom, not the freedom to do as we please, but the freedom to remain whole, even when life doesn't deliver what we expect. And are you living in your own desert? Maybe not a geographic one, but an emotional one, an invisible place where everything feels dry, silent, still. Where each day seems the same as the last. Where hope, though still alive, has grown weary of waiting. Maybe you're in a season of waiting without answers. Maybe life's silence has become so loud, you've started doubting whether you're even being heard. And when no one seems to see your inner struggle, it grows even heavier, doesn't it? You might be waiting for recognition at work, while others, less deserving, less prepared, steps you feel you deserved. Maybe you're waiting for affection, for validation, for forgiveness, for a reconciliation that never comes. Or maybe just waiting for the next step, the next certainty, the next light. But what if this silence that hurts so much today is actually a kind of refinement? Abraham didn't receive the promise and its fulfillment in the same moment. There was space, time, testing, discomfort. And maybe your story also needs these elements, not as punishment, but as preparation. What if this emptiness you feel isn't a hole, but a cradle, an inner space being carefully emptied to receive something new, something greater? Because there's no real transformation without first an emptying, without what we believed was essential, being removed, without certainties, dying, so true faith can be born. The one who promised hasn't forgotten. But first, he must strengthen you. Do you remember someone who betrayed you and you still haven't been able to forgive? Has that bitterness become a desert consuming you from within? Are you still trying to force a situation, a relationship, an opportunity, a decision that clearly isn't ready? What if, like Abraham, you learned to release control and, instead of demanding, chose to trust? Yes, trust, not in a predictable outcome, not in clear logic, but in a greater purpose that may only become visible after time has run its course. Maybe what troubles you most today, the silence, the waiting, the feeling of stagnation, is exactly what's preparing you. And like Abraham, maybe you don't need to understand all the whys right now. Spiritual and emotional maturity isn't born from answers, but from endurance. Maybe your mission in this moment isn't to do but to endure, to listen to the silence, to wait without losing dignity, without losing faith, without losing yourself. The world pressures you for results. Social media demands constant movement, empty comparisons, visible achievements. But the soul matures slowly, in the time of the desert, in the school of silence. And don't be deceived. Waiting is also a path. Pausing also builds. Silence also speaks. So breathe, look around. And instead of asking why nothing is happening, ask, who am I becoming in this process? Because maybe this silence isn't the end of the promise, but the refinement of the one who will receive it. Abraham wasn't chosen by chance. He was prepared, tested, and he remained. And will you keep trying to control everything you feel is delayed, or will you surrender time to purpose and make silence your place of strength? Like Abraham, you don't need to understand right now. You only need to remain. Steadfast. In faith. With dignity. The strong man doesn't demand explanations from time. He becomes worthy of the promise. While he waits. This phrase is more than a conclusion, it's a key, because waiting isn't surrendering to apathy or defeat. It isn't crossing your arms hoping the universe will solve everything for you. True, Waiting is invisible action. It's working on your heart while the outside world seems still. It's holding tight to the reins of hope. Even when everything tells you to let go, it's easy to have faith when everything goes right. But true trust is tested in the silence of delay. That's where the soul learns to trust the seed, not the harvest time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Strength doesn't come from the answers you get, it comes from the posture you adopt, even when there are no answers. So if this story has sparked something in you, if you're also in that space between not yet and it should have happened by now, single quotes, if you feel like you're walking through an unmarked desert with no shortcuts, no guarantees, take a deep breath. You're not alone. Many walk in silence, with weary souls, but spirits still standing. And maybe, just maybe, this channel is the refuge your journey needs. Here, every story is more than content. It's a compass, direction when words disappear, and only the heart remains. Consider subscribing, but only if it resonates within you, not on impulse, but because you've found here a pause that speaks your language. And remember, the stone that remains in the riverbed, shapes the waters. Those who remain steadfast shape destiny.